When you think of the best duos in Major League Baseball, there's probably a bunch of guys and a bunch of different teams that come to mind before the Cubs. Teams like the Dodgers, of course, stand above all with Ohtani and Betts, or Ohtani and Freeman being their top two. And the Mets, of course, must be mentioned, now having Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor. But I'm here to tell you that now with Kyle Tucker and Seiya Suzuki, based off 2024 stats, the Cubs actually also have one of the league's absolute best hitting duos. Now your first thoughts after hearing this might be, nah, not quite, they're not that good. But let me go into what each player does and then look at where they ranked last year to show you that in fact Seiya and Tucker are way up there for a 1-2 punch of one team's best hitters. Again, looking at last year's numbers and doing just a bit of statistical gymnastics, but really not too much. Starting with Kyle Tucker, it must be mentioned that he only played 78 games last year, making 339 plate appearances. Remember that plate appearance number because it will be important a bit later on. In the time he did play though, it is no exaggeration to say that Kyle Tucker was a top 5 hitter in Major League Baseball. The man was simply elite at everything to do with hitting. He hit 289 with a 408 on base and a 585 slugging. That was all good for a 993 OPS, which put him below just two guys, Aaron Judge and Shohei Ohtani. That is it. He also hit 23 homers in his 78 games, good for a 162 game pace of around 48, and walked more than he struck out. Tucker was an on-base machine and also a contact machine to go along with his elite power, and when he did find himself on base, he was also a threat on the base paths, as he stole 11 bases without getting caught a single time. The easiest guy to compare Tucker to last year was really Juan Soto. Their OPSs were only about 4 points apart, and they both showed what it means to be an all-around flawless and fantastic hitter. Soto just did it over a whole season and finished third in MVP voting as a result, despite having minimal base running or defensive value. Then there is the second guy in this duo, Seiya Suzuki, whose numbers obviously pale in comparison to Kyle Tucker's, but quietly put himself in the company of some very big stars in the game of baseball last year, at least offensively. In 132 games, Seiya hit 283 with a 366 on base and a 482 slugging. His OPS was 848, and he hit 21 homers and 27 doubles to go along with 16 steals. While he's not anywhere near the game's headlining players, Seiya still, in terms of various stats, proved himself to be a top 20 hitter in the game. By WRC+, he was 16th among qualified hitters, putting him right above a couple of guys you might have heard of, called Francisco Lindor and Freddie Freeman. By on base, he was 14th, and by slugging, he was just outside the top 20 at number 22. It's easy to see that the Cubs have two great hitters here, but they also have some fierce competition. So, to truly see who the best hitting duo in baseball was in 2024, we're going to rank every hitter by WRC+ and see which teams have two guys that are, let's say, top 25. If you're wondering why WRC+, it's simply a great all-encompassing hitting stat that adjusts for everything it needs to and boils the hitter's contribution to the production of runs down to just one number. This is where we come back to that Kyle Tucker plate appearance number as being important, because for this ranking, I'm going to set a minimum number of plate appearances at 300. This is basically going to include every hitter who played at least about half the season last year. I could bring it down even lower, but then we'd start including guys who probably just thrived off a small sample size. For example, do we really consider Matt Wallner, Victor Robles, and Randall Grichuk top 25 hitters in baseball? Well, probably not, but if we set the PA limit to 250, well, they are. Even then, bumping the minimum down to as low as 200 doesn't change the narrative that much. Seiya would then be the 26th best hitter by WRC+, knocking him out of the top 25, but Tucker would remain at third, and this would actually remove the Mets and Phillies as being two teams with two top 25 hitters. So with the duos of Soto and Lindor, as well as Harper and Schwarber being hypothetically kicked out from this because of great small sample size performers, I'm sure you guys can see why a minimum of 300 is about as low as we can go. Even 300 is fairly generous. Christian Yelich, who played just 73 games last year, just barely makes the cut with 315 plate appearances, but he was through and through a spectacular hitter in the games he did play in, so I don't feel bad including guys like him, and obviously Kyle Tucker, who had 339 plate appearances, because everything those guys did backs up their amazing results, so those probably weren't fluke performances. So which teams have at least two top 25 hitters? The Dodgers, the Mets, the Twins, the Braves, the Rangers, the Phillies, and the Cubs. This already puts the Cubs in pretty rare company. That's just 7 out of 30 teams who had multiple guys in the top 25, and 4 of them were playoff teams. So that's good, but it doesn't mean Tucker and Seiya are elite as a duo, just in the top 23 or so percent of the league. Now we're going to look at each duo and compare their WRC+ number to rank which ones among our 7 teams had the highest combined offensive output in 2024. Predictably, the Dodgers stand on top. Worth noting that the Dodgers actually have 3 top 25 hitters, those of course being Ohtani, Betts, and Freeman, but we're just going to use Ohtani and Betts because those were the top 2 last year, and Ohtani's mammoth season helps them achieve a combined WRC+ of 322, putting them comfortably in first place. Down in last place among our 7 is the Phillies duo of Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber. Yes, both of them were top 25, but what hurts the Phillies here is the fact that Harper had the highest WRC+ of the two with 145, which is incredible, but it ranks him just 15th. Next to last is the Rangers with Corey Seager and their newly acquired Jock Peterson, who had a career high 151 WRC plus last year after an up and down few seasons. Now Peterson barely faced lefties because he's not great against them, so I almost want to put an asterisk here, but there's no point really. If I start putting asterisks or removing guys, it looks like I'm just going out of my way to make the Cubs look better, and there's really no need. In 5th is the Braves. With Acuna Jr. getting injured and Olsen and Riley disappointing last year, their sole great hitter was Marcell Ozuna, who ranked 11th in WRC+. You'll recall they also recently signed Jurickson Profar, whose breakout year landed him the 21st spot on this top 25. Combine Ozuna and Profar's WRC+ numbers, and you get 293, putting them just 2 points above the Rangers. Now that we're looking at the middle of the pack on this list, you might think it's time for the Cubs. We know they like to hang out in the middle of the pack, but not yet. It's actually the Twins of all teams who come in 4th. Carlos Correa was having a huge resurgence before injury cut him short, and the always injured but usually very good Byron Buxton did manage to play in over 100 games for the first time since 2017, so their combined 297 WRC+ puts them just ahead of Atlanta. We're gonna make a big jump now to get to the top 3, where just the duos of Ohtani and Betts, Soto and Lindor, and Tucker and Suzuki remain. While you might think that among all these big names the Cubs would come in 3rd, but it's actually the Mets in 3rd. Soto had a WRC+ of 180, tying him with Kyle Tucker, and leaving the battle down to the 2 second best hitters, where Seiya ekes out Lindor by just a single point of WRC+, meaning that the Cubs currently technically have the 2nd best hitting duo in Major League Baseball in terms of 2024 performance. Now look, I'm not using this to make some sort of prediction for next year. This hitting duo being the 2nd best in the league would be incredible, but feels pretty unlikely. Regardless, I think our top 2 relative to others is really flying under the radar, and I wanted to make this video to prove just how good they are, which is extremely good, at least relative to the rest of baseball right now. Let me know what you guys think of this conclusion. I really tried not to adjust things at all to favor the Cubs and choose specific things that make our duo look better than they really were, but they still ranked in the top 2 in my little system. Also remember, I did say hitting duo. This video is about hitting. WRC+ is a purely offensive stat. This ranking is not about who's a better overall player, so no one come at me for saying that Seiya is like a better overall player than Francisco Lindor. I think you guys understand though. Anyways, thanks guys for watching this. I hope you enjoyed. Hit like, hit subscribe, all that. Comment your thoughts, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.